Jackson.
Never in my life associated the word boring with baseball.
We know what's up.
Me? Yeah. Famous? Yeah.
And I'm like giddy over there smiling like, we're about to win this shit.
Did everyone give you crap? Give me a good host story.
I'm not picking it up.
We both love the game.
We talk about it every day.
Getting on baseball.
Having some popcorn, you're fooling around your phone.
I'd have to wait in line for 3 hours.
Hang on, because it's about to be a wild ride.
All right, there's no human being on the planet I'd rather be talking to right now than Billy Wagner. And I've had the privilege of being able to say that a few times now, and every single time I am so honored, man, Billy, especially this time of year. I'm not going to lie to you, especially this time of year. But thank you again for coming on.
Well, you always make me feel good. So I always enjoy this conversation. So, it's been pleasurable every year. All
right, well, here we go. Here we go, Billy. Here we go. This is it. The rubber meets the road time. We've done a few of these the last couple of years, and I do want to sort of take people a little bit behind the scenes of, when we first started talking. I think it was after. Well, I'm going to exclude the time you came to the Red Sox for a brief minute, and
right.
But when we started talking about the Hall of Fame stuff, we had done the Hall of Fame ballot reveal with D.B. Sweeney of reprising the role of Shoeless Joe Jackson coming out of the cornfield, and you respond to it, and you were the one guy that Shoeless Joe said, yes, we approve of this guy, of Billy Wagner. And we started talking about this before. If of all the great honors in your life, to have Shoeless Joe Jackson be like, that's the guy.
Well, I always felt like I should have played back then anyway. So, to have Shoeless Joe Jackson actually come out and tell me I'm his guy, that was something awesome. But also being a fan of DB and the 8 Men Out and Lonesome Dove and Cutting Edge and you name it, being a fan anyway, that was always that's something I thought was pretty unique. So, I was in awe in just that response.
Can I ask you, so just along those lines, what's your favorite baseball movie? What is it?
Gosh, I tell you, I'm so sentimental. Just about any. You catch me on the right moment. It could be The Natural. I think it's funny, I'm a big softie, but, Love of the Game.
Clear the mechanism, right?
Yeah. When that was coming out was near the end of my career. And so, being part of a no-hitter in Yankee Stadium and seeing the end of the road, it was one of those movies you could kind of just, could see and looking back at all the steps and the journey and, where you've come from and stuff. That was something that was pretty sentimental. But I like all baseball movies. I don't know if, I'm not I think of if a critic says that it's a D movie, I automatically am attracted to it. So I love all those movies. I've watched Bull Durham and all these Major League, and I enjoyed that the little and I think being involved in the game. I think that's when you look at these little intricacies and you sit there and you go, yeah, that's right. That or not so much, but I think being involved has made watching these movies a whole lot more interesting because you can identify a lot more with some of the things.
Well, you just hit on some, and I could say, okay, there's part of you where Wild Thing, who can't relate to that as a closer, or like I said, Kevin Costner for The Love of the Game, Clear Mechanism, right?
Right.
All the stuff. Even there's Bull Durham. You're coming up and you see the rookie who is like, hey, just learn the cliches, rookie. Just learn the cliches. So
exactly. Yeah. There's so much to identify through my career in these movies. And you always grab for that piece here and there because, these little cliche lines tend to work out. As clear the mechanism and in that moment where things are going really fast and you make your debut appearance in Boston and, you're trying to impress the team, and all of a sudden the noise is just really loud, and you're trying to take a deep breath. I mean, these things, I know, I'm probably dating myself, but these are things that I think make a difference, because you're always talking to yourself when you're pitching. There's always that positive side. You're like, hey, hey, calm down, make a pitch, these things. And so, some of these things you use on the mound, like to slow things down.
What was the most nervous you were ever on a baseball field?
The one that stands out is Bobby Cox's. Could have been my last game and Bobby Cox's last game, and it happened to be against the Phillies to get into the playoffs. We needed to win, and I think Colorado or somebody needed to lose. It was something like that. If we won, we were in. But it was, a packed house. It was a Bobby Cox Appreciation Day, and I'm a huge. I grew up as a Braves fan, so he brings me in the game with runners on base. I think it's 3-run lead or something like that. And I think the very first pitch is laced off the wall. And my first thought is, I'm probably not getting out of Atlanta alive if I don't get this right. And I remember it just kind of slowing down. And after I gave up that hit, I think I punched out the next 4 guys, which kind of made things great. But as soon as that ball hit that wall, it was like, it might have been bases loaded. I think it's, really one of those swallow your tongue moments, and heart's in your throat, and you're like, oh shit.
And was that at the end, toward the end of your career?
Yeah.
Which is amazing, right? So it speaks to everything you're talking about, that feeling you have on a baseball mound, where I asked you the most nervous you've been, and you went to one of your last games. I mean, that's what's incredible about baseball. It's to have the jitters at that moment. That's pretty.
Well, you never want to let anybody down, and being a pleaser, you do whatever you got to do to win. And so taking the ball, and a guy that sticks out for me that took the ball every time, and I got to play with, was Papelbon. I'd been closing longer than he had, and all these things. But when I got to Boston, watching him, he took the ball, and there was always this just a pride of being able to take that ball every day. And a lot of times you're taking that ball, and you could probably use a day off, mentally, physically, or whatever. And but I think those, when you watch the guys that did it so well, like Mariano and Trevor and Franco and Bruce Sutter and Eck and all these guys, I think you just start to realize that you just have to, no matter if you're at 100%, you just step in there and you do what you got to do. And sometimes, amazing enough, you get through it and stuff. And sometimes you have to grin and bear it and stuff.
We're going to we'll ease into your awesomeness and all the Hall of Fame stuff. But I do want to say, you mentioned Papelbon, and when you came to the Red Sox, you were setting up for Papelbon. And I'm sure I've said this at our other podcasts that we've done, but I just repeated it today to a friend of mine, something that you said about how the ninth inning is so different. I remember you saying, I remember where you were.
Absolutely.
We talked in the dugout. We were saying this, and you were saying like how, because all of a sudden now you had the eighth. And he's like, listen, I'm just telling you, the ninth inning is different. It just is, right?
It is, and you can't explain it until you've been in that. Their approach against you, how they view you. It's like pitching in any type of game where you've got a big lead or you don't have a lead. A lot of times how a hitter faces you and values you dictates the moment. A 1-run lead and a guy can go out there and pump strikes and do it. You can pitch in and out of the zone a little bit, but when you're ahead or behind by a substantial amount, let me tell you, that hitter's not worried about it. He is not worried about the same stuff that failing is in the ninth inning. And when you go out there and stuff, and I tell you, my ERA in games, I'll tell you right now, I think the first 2 or 3 playoff games I ever were in, it was like 13-2 when I came in. And I think I gave up 2 runs each. And you're sitting here, where you face these guys and it's a 3-2 ball game, they swing different. Their pressure's on them a little bit more. And so it is different. It'll always be different. And I mean, it's not that you're going out there with any different intent, but you have way more room to make a mistake and stuff like that. And, if you're coming in to get an inning, the only thing those are the days that for me that I was always going, it's stat day. I mean, you're self-motivating yourself. You're like, hey, punch out 3, it's very tough to go out there in that same mindset because hitters they're not as juiced up. I mean,
no, their focus is 10 times what it is in the 8th. Well, no, I mean 10 times, but
yeah. I agree.
Right?
You know what? And that's why I think guys that set me up, were able to go out there and do it. I mean, it's a different mindset to go out there, even in the 8th. If you go in the 8th and you're pitching in a save type situation to get it to the 9th, it's different than going out there in a 4 or 5 run lead and you're throwing and knowing that you have some room to give up a run here and there. Not every pitch is a pressure pitch. There's something to that. I think it's just, I'd like to say we all go out there in the 9th inning with a 5-run lead and go, oh man, I'm going to treat this like I'm facing, top 3 hitters in the world, and say it's just not, because you're so used to that pressure of 1 and a 2, and a 3-run lead seems really easy. A bloop, error, a walk, all of a sudden you're a pitch away. And I mean, because everybody likes to put you in that microscope, but every pitch in the 9th inning is that pressure cooker because it has a different meaning than, in the 8th. You have another bat to deal with in the 8th. But some of these you just have to, you get down there and you're pounding strikes and you give up a run and, everybody's like, I mean, it's hard to pitch the same.
Yeah. So then that leads us to why you are a Hall of Famer. One of the reasons why closers should be viewed in that light. And I am fully, I'll just say it out of the gate, I am fully confident, Billy. This is it. This is a year. You've paid your dues. You've gone through enough years of anxiety, whatever it is. Your time has come. And so one of the questions I have, so this is the 10th time you've gone through this, right, man?
Right.
Man, January, the last 9 Januaries.
Well, the first couple weren't as bad because you're happy to stay on the ballot. It's like
were you worried about really, that the first time?
Well, the first one, you're like, you're at 10%. And you're like, wow, 10%. And I've done a few interviews since then, and doing them, I did one yesterday, and they were talking about, did you ever think that you would start at 10 and be so close to being in the Hall of Fame? So they put it into perspective. But, the first time you're on, and you're staying on, and you're making very minimal, headway. And then all of a sudden it's sitting at 30, and then all of a sudden 65, 68. All of a sudden it's, oh, wait a minute. And then you have that moment like last year. And, for me, it was probably one of the most humiliating and, gut-wrenching moments was come up short. But I was on the field with my team. NBC Nightly News shows up. I have no idea they're going to be there. They mic me up because I'm not going to say no.
Yeah.
They mic me up. I'm going through the whole thing. They stopped practice to tell me that I didn't make the Hall of Fame and I was 5 votes short. I mean, the epitome of what humility. What do you have to do? And so, gosh, it was that was a very difficult moment to have to go through. And so now going through this, going through this last moment, you're sitting here and, there is huge anxieties. I didn't have this much anxiety when I pitched because of I had somewhat control. Now you have no control. And so, keeping myself busy has been I try to do something constantly or go to sleep or something because it's one of those moments in your life that changes your life. I mean, if you get into the Hall of Fame, you're viewed completely different than, when you're not. I mean, unfortunately, guys that I think should have been in the Hall of Fame is Don Manley, Dale Murphy, guys like that. You know, there's a difference with the title HOF on your name, and that's an important moment in your career when you know what you went through and put out to get to this point.
So last year we did this, and I was optimistic. I'll be honest with you, and I would do anything. I sang from the mountaintop, starting with Shoeless Joe walking out of the cornfield. I mean, no, actually starting with batting stance guy, doing his thing for you. But so when you go into last year, you're close, and a lot of people are thinking, and really also we look at the trends, and it was sort of trending that way, and you're trying to keep busy, you're coaching the team. I would imagine last year was a little bit different because you probably let it creep in a little bit more, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard not to, when you get at that point and you're like, the year before you were 27 votes away. And so you're like, man, that's not bad. Yeah. And so you're like, oh, okay. Yeah. Next year I'll probably, there's a real good chance. And then all of a sudden, everybody's like, hey, yeah, this is a good, you should probably get in this year. And all of a sudden it's you shoulds, or, you should be in the Hall of Fame. All of a sudden, there's nothing you can do but smile and grin and bear this a little bit. And so, last year was very difficult. And I think this year has gotten increasingly worse just because, I've tried to not, I wouldn't say I've tried very hard, but I do watch this a little bit more now. And so, you're seeing the trends, and you're just waiting on that shoe to fall. And, all of a sudden, you've been trending up, and all of a sudden you get this death blow. And so, I'm walking around with this huge knot in my stomach most of the, for the next week.
I mean, you just had your son's wedding, and like, you should be able to enjoy life. You're coaching. You went to the coaching convention, and all of this the entire time. I don't know. No, you shouldn't have to do this. I apologize. I apologize on the behalf of the baseball community. You should already have been putting HOF when you're at your son's wedding. You should have signed HOF already from last.
Well, I think that's part of that, though. I mean. I like the debate of baseball players. I think the debate of baseball players, I think the debate of the game is what's so awesome about the game. I think it's, baseball isn't boring because you can debate it. Everything in baseball is debatable. The home run, the foul ball, the strikes, these are the things that make the game so awesome. And so, why wouldn't you like to sit around the barbershop and go, hey, this Wagner kid, what do you think? I've seen him do this. He was that. And I think all these things are debatable. And so I don't have a problem with that. I think the problem we're not, a lot of times it's not based on what we thought the process was going to be about, and your numbers and, your longevity and things like that. I think it's, to some extent, you start getting the personal attacks and stuff like that. I mean, the thing that kills you is when somebody calls you and tells you why they're not voting for you. I think.
Wait, who does that?
I can't say, because I think that would. I mean, as much as I'd like to.
No. But you don't have to say. But why would someone do that? Like,
I think, being able to tell somebody why they're not good is. I think that's very personal. Very, I think those are tough situations because, it's not, if you don't want to vote and you don't think I'm that quality, I get it. Am I going to disagree? Absolutely. But I also think that to personally attack saying, I'm not going to vote for you because you're from Southwest Virginia and, your political beliefs and things like that. That has nothing to do with baseball. I think if you've had your morals and you've stayed in line and you know you're not a felon and you're doing what you're supposed to do on the field. I mean, that's what you're being graded on.
Well, let me ask you, Billy. So, first of all, I totally agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more. And anybody, in my view, anybody who doesn't view or doesn't vote for someone based on their merit as a baseball player shouldn't be voting. But have you had people say that to you? They've said,
yeah.
"I'm not voting for you because of whatever."
Where I'm from.
Really?
Absolutely.
Well, that person should have their vote stripped from them. I'm like, they just should.
Well, but they use that as a badge of honor. I mean, I think those are the things. And I mean, to be able to vote on somebody that never saw you, or never, who covers different things, I mean, you got to be around it to know who that person is. I mean, I don't know every guy personally that's going in the Hall of Fame, but the guys that are on that list are pretty dang on good. I don't, but I don't know them personally. But when I know stats, that's what you're working on. And I think the game is, it's not about the personal side of what you are. It's about what you have accomplished, what you brought to the game, and there's so many. I don't know how you change the game anymore than some of these the guys, all-time greats that were there. I mean, but I think to sit there and look at certain guys and say they're not worth it because of numbers is one thing, but personal stuff, I think that gets hard to deal with.
Well, I think that your vote total has gone up, and as we said, gone up and up and up and up. And I think that for the most part, there are idiots like you talked about. I'll call them. You'll call them idiots. You don't have to, but they're idiots like you talked about, and they're idiots in that sense. Maybe they're not idiots in other parts of life, but voting for the Hall of Fame is such an honor and such a privilege. And I think that everybody, whether there's plenty of guys who have people might not get along with in a clubhouse, that shouldn't be part of the vote. But I do think that as it has gone along, I think that voters, there's more information, there's more research, there's more understanding, along with the people who saw you play, obviously.
Right.
But there's also more avenues to see your excellence, to quantify your excellence. And I think that's an awesome thing. I think that's great. It's not just, let's look at the amount of saves or let's look at whatever. There are so many different ways to look at it. And I do think, Billy, and I'm going to paint this in a positive light for voters, is that, they not only did I think that the majority of people who saw you pitch say that's a Hall of Famer, that's a Hall of Fame pitcher, but now even the people who are voting who maybe didn't see you pitch, which there are some,
right. Yeah,
and they can say, well, hey, this adds up.
Well, the new voters have been the biggest jump for me. The new voters,
yeah,
and they're the ones who probably actually went to the games and watched me play, and hopefully I brought some joy to what they enjoy about baseball. And so, it's we look back to the golden eras and what brought us happiness. It was the Mantles, Yastrzemskis, it was the Rices, it was the Berras, the Stan Musials. It was those type of people that brought that joy. But if you were a Cubs fan, you weren't liking Stan Musial.
But you should not vote for Stan Musial.
Right? Could you imagine? I can't imagine who's the guy who didn't vote for Derek Jeter. Yeah. I mean, who didn't vote for Griffey? I mean, how does Ichiro going to get?
Well, I was just going to bring that up, Billy.
And I mean, not that he shouldn't. I'm not saying that at all. You're going to tell me that Ichiro, who was awesome, is going to get more respect than the guy like a Derek Jeter or a Griffey, who every kid wears their hat on backwards because of that. But I mean, there's something just wrong with that.
Yeah, and it comes back to, I do think, like you said, people for the most part are more educated. And the people that I've talked to, like, so Billy, I've had a vote. This will be my 4th year. And, I said before, nobody cares about, I had to stop and start and whatever it was. But it's my 4th year. And as you're waiting, it's such an honor. And I do think the people who are getting it understand that honor. The more people I talk to, when they got that vote, they are taking it more serious than ever. Where, as you said, I think maybe, and I don't want to paint everyone with a broad brush, but there are some older guys or women or whatever who maybe are just like, I'm going to vote for one person because that's it. Well, you're not doing research. You're not looking into it. That's just it. So.
Well, and I mean, you look at the guys like Beltran and David Wright and Andrew Jones, and I mean, I think every guy that's on that list should be in the Hall of Fame because I played against them, and the Pedroias. I mean, and for me, the uniqueness of being, like a Pedroia of that caliber size and what you bring to the game and the energy and playing with Dustin for that short time, playing against Dustin, seeing those things, it's kind of like looking at Altuve. What does Altuve do? These are things for me that, how did you change the game? Well, today you'll never find guys like Altuve and Pedroia. If you find a pitcher under my size nowadays, I mean, it's unheard of. And so, to do what I did when I was playing to is what they do now. I just think that to appreciate what you're looking at, you have to really see that. And I think a lot of, the greatest credit a player ever gets is when he's, of course, voted into the Hall of Fame, but it's the peers. I mean, to hear, a Derek Jeter or a Nolan Ryan or somebody credit you with something that you wouldn't expect. I mean, those are the things. And so seeing the peers tell you how good you are, those are, I think those end up helping you get through these moments where you don't have, you can look back and go, well, Derek Jeter said I had one of the best fastballs, or, you feel a little bit better about yourself. But, I think, I think if I wasn't to get in, I worry about some of the guys who are really, are trendsetters like Kimbrel or Jensen or, what's the cost? The kid out in Cleveland.
Manuel Clase. Yeah.
Yeah, Clase. I mean, here, these guys, you can't win games without closers. I mean, we could say this, but if you have that dude, it's really nice. I mean, can you imagine saying the Yankees were going to play a game without Mariano Rivera, and a starter can't go? I mean, the days of the Whitey Fords and who would go out there and throw 9 innings and stuff like that, was different. Today's game was not played that same. And Eckersley, helped to evolve, make this possible for somebody like me and the guys. And Hoffman and Trevor, because they condensed the game and said, well, wow, why don't we use this guy in this way? And so, I worry about those guys behind me that maybe they're not valued in what they've done.
No, I do think it's important. I've talked to Kenley about this a lot the last couple of years, and I know that he really, really looks up to you and values you and understands the importance of you getting in. But you had mentioned guys like Altuve, Pedroia, and one of the things, like, obviously we go by numbers, we go by, there has to be some semblance of numbers to start the conversation.
Absolutely.
But, I haven't revealed my ballot yet, but spoiler alert, I've already revealed that I'm voting for Dustin. I'm obviously voting for you. And I think that one of the things when people are going to say, well, why did you vote for Dustin? And say, well, because I got to be honest with you, I can support it with numbers, but I also if I was going to say to a kid, and you coach kids, if I was going to say to a kid, same thing with watching you, that's who should represent baseball. That sort of player, that sort of personality, that sort of attitude, that, as you said, changing the game the way that both of you guys did, that has to be implemented, or that has to be taken into account too, I think. And I thought a lot about that when it comes to Dustin. Believe me.
Well, and guys like Andrew Jones, who I played against.
Yes, another one.
I mean, his numbers are unbelievable, but that's nothing. Smoltz, Glavine, Maddox, Danny Nagel, these guys don't get these wins. They ain't getting these wins if that guy ain't out there. That guy stopped the game. He changed the game defensively. I mean, we can talk about Devon White. We can talk about – but there's nobody in the outfield that's done things like he did in his 10-year prime. When he came up at 19 years old, it was like Cabrera. Oh, my God. Him and Cabrera were ridiculous. I mean, how you pitch to them or how you watch them play and their moxie. I mean, you didn't know that they were so young when they rolled into that. And there's just certain guys when they rolled into the league that were game changers. And, Dustin was very, very much like that. And, if he doesn't get hurt, he's very much like David Wright. He doesn't get hurt. These guys don't get hurt. Boys, a salute. Guys that, had numbers and were building this may have been a completely different view of these things. But, I think, I'm going to be biased because I got to watch them. I got to play against them. And so, of course, when you're in that moment with these guys and you're seeing them come through and you're in the daily grind with them, I mean, I don't think people can just sit and go, well, I watched him when they came in, because you missed that time when, he just was saved 3 runs. He went 0 for 3, and you looked at the box score and he was 0 for 3, 2 strikeouts, but he made 2 diving catches, threw a guy out. I mean, changed the game, and all of a sudden all you're looking at is Smoltz, Glavine, Maddox getting all these wins. And I mean, that's part of – you can't have numbers without good teammates and great teams on that. And so that was part of it. I mean, when Maddox and Glavine and those guys were coming at you, had Grisham and you had
Otis Nixon, right?
Otis Nixon, yeah. I mean, you had guys that, David Justice. You had guys – I mean, some of the biggest plays in their careers were because they robbed a home run or threw a guy out at home plate. I mean, those are things that, need to be involved in those discussions. And I don't think if you got to spend a week with Dustin Pedroia in the locker room, who walked around like you would have thought Dustin was 10 feet tall. I mean, he wasn't a bully. He wasn't, but I'm going to tell you, knew when he said something, that team reacted a different way. And I saw this in 6-8 weeks, but he's sitting there 1 minute playing cribbage with
Tito,
and next thing you know, I mean, he's up somebody's tail about, hey, we need to lock it in, or him and David are bickering, or somebody's going at it. But I mean, you just don't know that until you're in there to see how that moxie is. I mean, the Chipper Joneses, guys that have been, you just don't know how that is. And that's where when you're sitting around there and rubber meets the road and stuff like that. I mean, I used to drive Glavine in to Shea Stadium, and so to hear how nervous he was about going for 300th win, to these things like that you don't know how he got to that 300. Those are things that to understand, you have to really do your due diligence. You need to talk to people that were in there.
Well, that's the point, and I think that with if you really took pride in your Hall of Fame vote, you would do that. You talk to people. If you don't know, if you have any questions, you talk to people, or you do more research, whatever it is. But you hit the nail on the head in so many ways. The Andrew Jones thing is so spot on. Let me ask you this: is that you're a coach, you just went to the coaches convention in Washington, right?
Right.
What is we don't want to be like old men yelling at clouds, right? We don't want to be the game.
Right.
There's a lot of good stuff happening in the game. There's a lot of great technology. There's a lot of great things. What is the thing that you like, instead of saying, hey, you know what, this isn't going well? What do you like about where baseball's going, having coached it and also having seen other coaches hearing them talk?
Well, I think because we've evolved into the technology side, there is more of a discussion on how we as coaches use that to grow the game with kids, because kids see the numbers and they think spin rates, everything's valued in a spin rate. Our job as coaches, and it's always that fight. How do I get that kid to get off of looking at numbers and thinking about winning? Because I want him to throw hard. I want him to hit the ball hard. I want him to run fast. I want all these metrics to work out. But how do I get him the best out of him with the numbers he has and give him confidence to do that? I think being around these coaches, high school, college, and pro coaches, everybody has a different thought on how to do it. But I think it's the communication, the tidbits that you get at everything that these coaches are saying. I think that's, for me, what I enjoy the most. When I'm there, I'm up at all hours of the night, and I really enjoy talking the game and how these guys make their team successful, and understanding that there's things that do work for a high school coach and there's things that do not work for a high school coach. And there's some metrics that are better left for the college that doesn't need to be put into the high school database and thought process for these kids. But it's really an opportunity to really, if you love the game, being around it and talking to these coaches, you see that they love the game, and they want it to be great. But they fight the same battles that the coach from Southwest Virginia, who's got one assistant. It's 3 feet of snow on the ground right now, and they got to get ready in 4 weeks. And some of these coaches have been in those shoes, and those are the ones that help that coach to get through that moment of stress of like, well, how do I get these kids ready? How do I do these things? How do I set practice plans? And even though I had played and stuff, I was blessed with so many coaches I was able to reach out to and go, high school coaches really were very good at saying, these are things that work. These is the stuff. And I go to these things to hear how to make these kids successful. And so Pudge Gorman at James Madison High School, who coached Bryce Eldridge, guys like him, Rob Honey, who's on the board of the ABCA, who coaches down at Chantilly. These coaches love baseball. They love making kids better. And, you just see it when you go to the ABCA that, these there's guys that have passion in this sport. And those are the guys I like being around. I love having the conversations. Todd Fitzgerald down in Stoneman Douglas, who we play every year and stuff. I love playing those teams. I love my kids getting challenged by those teams, win, lose, or draw. But I learn so much when I'm down there, winning or losing or whatever, because there's just a conversation about the kid being successful. The win and losses for a coach are irrelevant. The success for the kid who goes out there and learns how to compete against a high level or learns how to handle a loss. These are the things as a coach, you're building young men and women, this type of character. And that's the accountability and the stuff that real coaches want for their team.
And so you have a son who's a major leaguer. I'm anxious to hear you with Will. I'm sure you talked to him about, they're doing this, right? They do this at the major league level. and you're probably like, they do? They didn't do that when I played.
Oh, yes. We have those discussions a lot. It is different, and I think it's a conversation that, when I watch the strike zone, that's the biggest thing for me. I'm like, I could never pitch in that right there, And I think guys like, can you imagine Bob Gibson or, Nolan pitching in that? Their stuff was electric. Either way, they'd have been very successful. But, the ability to knock somebody down or, hit a guy or take out a guy when they slide, those things like that, and I was just watching Will take out Ozzy. And then they're swinging. They're going after it, Yeah. It was different, or Pete Rose taking out a catcher in the All-Star game. The game has, but you're not seeing that. A guy that throws a ball inside now, that very rarely is that meant to happen. It's just evolved, and these pitchers today, the athletes today, are 10 times the athletes we were when we were playing. I mean, every guy looks like a Greek god. They're built different. They train different. And, to sit there and watch, Garrett Cole pitch, it's just, I mean, it's electrifying. I just sit there and how good they are and have to pitch in a box, and they can get questioned now. Now guys can tap their hats or challenge this or challenge that. And, it's
only going to get worse.
Well, the one thing I give Will a hard time is, and I always tell him, I said, I don't know why hitters aren't hitting 400. I mean, you got to really throw the ball right down the middle. And of course that gets, pitcher, hitter, father, son, it's always in jest. But, I tell you, it's the game. It tells you how hard this game really is when the strike zone is still the way it is. And you have guys who strike out so much and they have such low batting average. Tony Gwynn, Wade Boggs, Paul Molitor, they might have hit 450. I mean, just because they weren't going to try to do anything, and they just beat you to death. I mean, but that's the old time player looking at this.
Yeah, you're saying, Will, why aren't you hitting 450? Let's go. But another aspect, I'm curious because he comes up as a rookie. This is another thing that's changed, right? And I don't know if he would ever admit to his dad. I don't even know if this is a dad father-son conversation. If they're being really nice to me, and dad's saying, well, that's not how it used to be,
Well, you know what? He's used to the locker rooms, which is good, but he's very low maintenance. That's the good thing. He knows how to deal with it. And through all my mistakes and stuff, he was in the locker room quite a bit when I was coming to, and many a car ride home was like, hey, Will, you probably should never do what I just did. Or, hey, sometimes this is what it takes. And I think, he walks in there and you got big leaguers' sons that are on that team also. I mean, Dalton Varsho, I mean, Will played ball with him when Gary was my bench coach for the Phillies.
Yeah.
So, I mean, having some familiarity always helps, and having big leaguer sons on that team, everybody kind of knows, hey, we know what it's about. And your job is just to learn how to earn your spot, earn your stripes, do your thing. I remember when he said, that they were going to, the singing or the dancing on the plane or whatever. I'm like, I would do that every day to be in the big leagues. I remember, I had to carry a beer bag and soaking wet, and I'm in a suit, and I was like the happiest guy. I'm like, there's 4 cases of beer and I'm chugging it up. I'm totally happy with it, because I'm in the big leagues. I could care less. And the thing that I told Will that I wish I would have done more was really enjoyed the game more, because when I was doing, I had no idea. I didn't have a dad who played. I didn't know how to enjoy it. It was, business every moment, and you had to be serious. But now I tell him, you smile every day. Every day is a blessing, because you get to do something. And this is not a job. Yes, you're working, but I said, you could really be working. And so, I think that has been the conversations that we've had, that, when he gets really uptight or I'm like, hey, listen, from the outside, this is going to pass. You're fine. So,
man, listen, I could talk to you for 3 straight days. Although, if I could, Billy, I would talk to you all the way up until the announcement on Tuesday, just to keep your mind off things. But I will say this is that I know that you envision the day, the speech, the field, the stage, all of that. But I'm going to tell you right now, because you're getting in. I'm going to tell you right now that I think the best day, or not the best day, a day that is very underrated is a day in May. And I say this because David Ortiz, I was honored that David asked me and another writer to be with him on this day in May when nobody else is in Cooperstown, and they give the private tour of the Baseball Hall of Fame. and there's no one there. This is Cooperstown in May. No one's there. And you go, you hold Babe Ruth's bat, you see this stuff. And I can't I can't wait for you to get in, but I can't wait for you to experience that, because that is a time where you just get a chance to. That's where they show the video, about a 15-minute video, and I was sitting next to David, and I look over, and he's getting very emotional. That'll be a great day, and I want you to focus on the great days that are ahead, because there are going to be great days ahead.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
and I'm looking forward to it. I know it's a tough process, but like I said, it's all out of my hands. But I'm excited at the possibilities.
Yeah, well, it'll be great. It'll be great. And again, spoiler, I voted for you. So,
well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Again.
Thank
All right,
you
thanks,
so much.
Billy.
Yes, Rob. I appreciate you.